Maguire will be 38 on Wednesday, and the events of the next few hours could have a big say in where he spends his birthday. He could be back home in Glasgow with his family, or he could be still in Barnsley for the winners group of the Championship League. And with two matches coming up back-to-back this evening, it should be a lot clearer by the end of those matches about his chances of perhaps getting through to that winners group. Remember, you've got to be in the top four in the round-robin table by the time it's completed tomorrow evening to be in the group semi-finals. Maguire comes into this with one win and one defeat so far, and the same goes for his opponent, Mark Davis. Maguire's other match tonight will be directly after this one against Michael White, who's had a really poor day so far. He's lost all three of his matches. As for Davis, this is the end of day one for him. Well, that might look reckless, but actually it was just a very attacking safety shot. The idea being to get the reds open, get the cue ball back to the ball cushion, force your opponent into playing a good safety. Sometimes it works out. This time, it really hasn't. And so the first chance goes to Mark Davis. Came through a decider in his first match against Tom Ford, and was then beaten 3-1 by Noppon Sankam, but didn't really get much of a look in because the Thai played absolutely magnificently in that match. It's funny the difference between winning and losing in situations like this. Davis loses the match, it'll be one win out of three, and you'll feel he's got to have a great day tomorrow to get through to the group semi-final. If he wins it, he's won two of his three matches, and suddenly it's a totally different picture. You'll feel he's at least halfway then to getting through. 4 wins can mathematically miss out, but it's never happened. So generally, you're looking to get at least 3 wins and hopefully get through on frames difference, or frames 1. Ideally, of course, you'd like to win 4 and basically guarantee it. And 5 wins out of 6, there's no possible way you can miss out.
15. 22. 23.
Davis wasn't in the Players' Championship in Preston last week. So effectively he's coming here on the back of a run to the quarter-finals of the Indian Open, which was a welcome turnaround for him after a fairly dismal run over the last few months. Was eventually beaten by the young Chinese player Liu Haishan, who went on to reach the final, was beaten by Matt Selt.
28. 29. 34. 35. 41.
'There are very few things that give snooker players the feel-good factor, quite like winning the opening frame of a match in a single visit. And Davis has every chance of doing that now.
47. 48. 53. 54.
So just one more red needed after this simple pink to middle.
$60. 61.
The frame not absolutely over yet, because this looks like end of break. And it's only one snooker needed.
Yellow ball. Mark Davis, 61.
So a good effort from Davis, but Maguire will be coming back to the table. Looks like end of frame now.
One. Eight. Nine. 16. 17. 24.
Stephen Maguire played a very attacking safety. It didn't work out, and Mark Davis made him pay a heavy price with a break of 61, which has proved, in the end, effectively good enough for him to win the opening frame. So Mark Davis leads Stephen Maguire by 1-0. So Stephen Maguire didn't pot a ball in that opening frame. So he's 1-0 down as he gets us underway again in the second. It's actually the second time they've met in the Championship League this season. They played each other in the last group, Group 6. And Davis won by 3 frames to 2. And the only other time they've played in this tournament was 6 years ago. Maguire a 3-0 winner that time. And they actually first met best part of 15 years ago now, when Maguire won the UK Championship back in 2004, the biggest title of his career so far. He beat Davis in his first match by 9 frames to 2. And they have contested a semi-final. There was a European Tour event which counted for ranking points in Lisbon just before Christmas 2014. Maguire won 4-0. Davis scored 18 points in one of the frames and not at all in any of the others. Maguire went on to win the final. In total, Maguire has beaten Davis 9 times. Davis has had 4 wins, plus 1 win in the 6 Reds format, which he's been so proficient at over the years.
And a miss. Stephen Maguire 6. Yeah. Does that look like it? A little bit that way. Okay, Stephen. Touching ball.
England versus Scotland with a Welsh referee here, so all very British. But on the other table tonight, it's an all-Asian match. First up, Ding Junhui of China against Thailand's Noppon Sangkam. And it's been a really good day for Sangkam so far. He's played 2 matches and won them both, played some great stuff along the way, and he's won the first frame tonight as well. And like Maguire, Sangkam is playing back-to-back matches this evening because after he finishes against Ding, he'll be back on to play Tom Ford. Could have his semi-final place sewn up even before tomorrow's play starts. And for someone who wasn't even supposed to be playing in the tournament and came in as a late call-up, what a bonus that would be.
One. Green ball. Stephen Maguire 1. Touching ball.
Maybe not quite as tight to the brown as he might have liked, but that's still well judged. Had the freedom of the touching ball, had enabled him to play direct to the cushion.
Touching ball.
Well, can that red go to left middle? The two balls are so close together and the cueing's awkward. Stephen Maguire hoping to make it third time lucky after playing in two previous groups. Got out of the round robin section in both of them, but was then beaten in the semi-finals in groups 5 and 6. Obviously, both of those have enabled him to come back for the next group, but no second chances this time because this group is the last one before we start the winners group on Wednesday. So it's basically a case of win or bust.
One. Five. Stephen Maguire, 5.
Yeah, not quite firing yet, Maguire. Playing two matches back-to-back in the same session is great if you're playing well. But it can be a real slog if you're not. And it can have a very detrimental impact on your chances of getting through. was a tough one from so close to the cushion, and no idea really where the red was going to end up if he missed it. And so for the first time in this frame, Davis is in.
Foul.
Oh dear. You can't believe that's happened.
Stephen Maguire.
How often in a season, how often in a career do you see that? Trying to force the cue ball around the angles, just followed it straight in.
One. Six. Seven. $14.
She'll get this red to middle, but it's a bit of a tester. He missed a pot very similar to this earlier on against Tom Ford. It cost him the frame. Yeah, very similar shot again.
Stephen Maguire, 14.
And just like earlier today, a bit of pressure was added to it by the knowledge that if he missed, he could very well be leaving a good chance. So he was fortunate in this case that the balls fell kindly for him. There was a fairly high premium on that one as well. If Davis had potted it, looking at the way the reds are and the fact that he had held for the blue, would have been a really good chance. But again, if he missed it, big risk of leaving it. And having come to the table with a 30-point lead already, this is a very good chance for Maguire to level at 1-all.
6. Seven.
In a sense, this is just the sort of chance Maguire needed. He's been struggling a bit, not really firing in the early stages of this match. But the ball's sitting so nicely here. Good opportunity for him to get his arm going, get a frame on the board, and try to build from there. I have to say I'm surprised he missed that. Okay, there was a bit of distance on it, but cue ball was pretty close to the red. What an opportunity he's passed up there. And that picture tells you a lot about his frame of mind and the way the evening is going for him so far.
1. Seven. Eight.
So a bit of sorting out to do. 3 reds right out in the open. The other 3 only are cushions, but not exactly in the most awkward of positions. At the very least,
15.
Davis can make serious inroads into Maguire's lead. When your opponent is struggling a bit, really got to keep the pressure on him. Give him even more reason to feel downbeat.
21. 22. 29. 30. 37. 38.
Nice angle on the blue now to drop in behind this red on the right-hand side cushion. And that's just about perfect.
43.
The blue takes him into the lead for the first time in this frame.
44.
Really now, if he gets the next 2 shots right, he should lead 2-0. And this really is the key now. Get on the red with the right sort of angle. Any sort of angle really will do. And that's absolutely fine.
51. $52.
Just so long as he wasn't straight on that red. It was always going to be fairly straightforward to get in a colour.
$55.
So, yellow, green and brown for a 2-0 lead. Oh, wow, can you believe that after having done the hard work?
55.
He wasn't quite on the yellow the way he wanted to be, but you would still expect him to pot that 99 times out of 100.
Two.
And about 30 seconds or so after it looked almost certain to be 2-0, it now looks equally certain that Maguire is going to level instead. Oh. Well, I don't like saying it, but that's just an awful shot. If anything, he's been a little fortunate that he hasn't left an easier shot than this for Davis. But if Maguire's reprieve was unexpected, the one that Davis has been given is even more so. Well, in the end, Davis has opted for the safety, but he hasn't played it well. So both struggling to get over the line. And what's become a mini epic, this frame. Well, that's a really good shot, and all credit to him, putting what had gone before out of his mind to play a really good green and then land perfect on the brown. And again, he's just made it that bit more difficult for himself than he needed to. Touch careless to leave himself the wrong side of the blue. Well, this is a fairly routine shot. It can always go wrong. In this case, though, it hasn't. That's just about perfect. We'll still need the black as well, though. So Davis was 42-0 down. Looked like he was going to win the frame. Missed the yellow on 55. They both stumbled a bit from there. But in the end, it's Maguire who takes it on the black and levels at 1-1. So, having won the second frame with that green to black clearance, Stephen Maguire is level at 1-all with Mark Davis, who's going to start us off again in the third frame. Got to put that out of his mind now, Davis. When he came to the table, it wasn't straightforward. There were a few tricky balls, but he had negotiated all of the reds, and really, if he cut in that yellow, it would surely have been 2-0 up.
One.
Anyway, it wasn't to be, and Maguire is straight in here with an excellent long red at the start of frame 3.
Eight. Nine.
Mentioned earlier, Stephen Maguire's been in 2 groups already, been in the semi-finals of both of them.
16.
6 years ago he came in, was beaten semi-finalist in the first 2 groups he played, then lost 4 group finals in a row. He was still in it right up to the final of Group 7, lost that to Marco Fu, and that was it. He'd played 46 matches and still hadn't made the winners group.
17. Excuse me.
So he was spending a huge amount of time down in Essex at Crondon Park, which was our venue in those days.
24.
And then he was getting in his car at the end of each of those weeks down there, driving the 8 hours back to Glasgow, getting back at morning time, really.
25. 28. 29. 36.
And this match just starting to look a bit similar to Maguire's last one. Earlier today against Tom Ford, comfortably lost the first frame. But then gradually turned it round, started to play better as it went on, and ran out a 3-1 winner. Still some way to go before he gets to that stage. But unfolding in a somewhat similar pattern.
$44. 45. 50.
been a real up and down season for Maguire. He's been in 3 ranking events semi-finals.
52.
1 quarter-final as well, the UK Championship. Quite a few early defeats as well, though.
$53.
I think the best single match for him really was the UK Championship, where he was 4-0 down to Mark Williams. Came back to win 6-5, played absolutely brilliantly, and talked afterwards about how he'd kind of thrown off the shackles and cast aside all his inhibitions and just played freely. I just feel if he could get into that mindset a bit more, he could be back winning tournaments.
61.
As it was, he then lost in the next round of the UK, beaten heavily by Mark Allen. Then went back to his home city and was a first-round loser in the Scottish Open.
$67. 68.
So it looks as though he's won this frame in a single visit, because Davis already needs a snooker and there's surely more to come here. All Davis did was break off. Maguire potted a really good long red. Davis has been sitting down ever since. It was only about 10 minutes ago.
75.
He looked for all the world as though he was going 2-0 up. Now, he's going to be 2-1 down.
$78. $79.
Well, he's lost the cue ball a bit there, so needs a really good recovery shot if he's to stay on track for the century.
Foul.
Ah, that's unfortunate.
79
Did well to cut the black in. He's gone in off into the middle, but that break of 79 enough for Stephen Maguire to level the match. Or sorry, to go ahead of Mark Davis at 2-1. We are now coming towards the end of the 2018-19 season. Championship League finishing here in Barnsley this week. Then the Gibraltar Open, which is a ranking tournament, later in the week. Both of these lads will be playing in it. Then the Tour Championship next week. The 8 leading players of the season so far. Long matches, big money. It's going to be fantastic in Llandudno next week. And after that, all that's left is the China Open, and then, of course, the biggest of them all, the World Championship in Sheffield.
Stephen Maguire to break.
All that to come. In the shorter term, Maguire needs one of the 2 remaining frames to get his second win on the board in this group. Well, if the pot with which he got going in the previous frame was impressive, that one was arguably even more so.
scramble.
The difference being that this time he didn't finish nicely on a colour. He's still done well to pot that brown.
5.
And this is a little tester on this red. What a great opening red that was, and what a different Stephen Maguire we're seeing now. Earlier on, we were watching him slumped in his chair, looking dejected, despondent. Now he's looking just full of confidence.
$11. Yeah. Cheers. 12.
I mentioned earlier that year that Maguire played 46 matches in the Championship League and still didn't feature in the winners group. But in the other 6 appearances he's made, he's got to the winners group 3 times, and on 2 of those occasions he's made it all the way to the semi-finals.
20.
Never won it, never been in the final of it.
$27. $28.
Well, he just lost the cue ball a bit 2 shots ago, but he's played 2 decent recovery shots to get right back in prime position now. Only 1 more open red after this. But that bunch of reds looks nicely situated for going into. And whenever he does that, if it turns out right, that could hold the key to closing out frame and match here. And he has not got the result he was looking for.
43. Stephen Maguire, 43.
Well, it was a cracking opening red to the baulk pocket. And from it, Maguire makes 43. Not quite enough to get over the line yet. But Davis now in the position where he knows if he leaves 1 more chance, that could be the end of it.
Foul.
Well, he's potted a couple of truly exceptional reds in the last 2 frames, but Maguire was a long way out with that. And this is a good chance he's left for Davis.
One.
Davis, of course, is one of the great snooker names. Steve Davis, 6 times world champion in the 1980s, and long before that, the Davis brothers, Joe and Fred, both world champions. Joe played in all of the first 15 world championships and won all of them. It's a very different event in those days, of course, but this is their part of the country. They were from not far from here. Yorkshire itself, one of the traditional heartlands of the game. Obviously the World Championship and the UK Championship both take place in Yorkshire. There's always been a huge following for the game up here. Last season, of course, there were 3 major events in Yorkshire, with the English Open right here at the Metrodome in Barnsley as well.
15.
So many notable Yorkshire players over the years.
16.
Joe Johnson, the 1986 world champion from Bradford. Paul Hunter, 3 times Masters champion from Leeds. And of course, just a month or so now before the snooker circuit sets up base in Sheffield for the best part of a month. The World Championship qualifying rounds and then the championship itself.
$24. $29. Mark Davis, 29.
Yeah, he was never really looking in control of that. Just slipping a bit further out of position. To be fair, you wouldn't have said it was an obvious frame-winning chance. But this could be one now for Maguire. It's another great red he's potted. Well, it just sort of stuck to the reds there, didn't it? I don't think he's on this one to the right corner.
6.
Well, that angle looks more promising. Well, it clearly doesn't go. If it did, he would have been down and played it by now.
Stephen Maguire, 6.
I think if that little split on the reds had worked out, would have been all over. Maguire would probably have gone on to clinch it from there. So Davis comes to the table. A couple of awkward reds near the side cushions. And he dealt with some awkward reds in that break of 55 he had earlier when it looked like he was going to win the second frame before missing the yellow. But I think these ones are a bit trickier.
Six.
Oh, that's an excellent shot. Well, there's one of the two difficult reds now. Cannoned right over the pocket. Screwing back, stretching just a little, using the rest. This can go wrong. Oh, he made that look very easy. Now, it's largely about what he can do with that one remaining tricky red.
13.
Well, that's promoted it a bit. Now, this looks to be the key shot in this frame.
20.
Davis pots this last red. Virtually certain to be on something. And we should be heading for a decider. Nicely done.
21.
So Mark Davis has already played one deciding frame today. Looks like he's heading for another. Only needs up to the pink, so doesn't need to concern himself with the tricky black.
$29. $33. $38.
So Stephen Maguire knocked in a great opening red, got in, made 43. then ran out of position, and Mark Davis gradually turned the frame around. He's clinched it on the colours, and at 2 frames all, we're going the distance. So it's been an interesting match. We've had a couple of frames that really could have gone either way. Maguire will certainly feel he had his chances to close out frame and match there, even after that initial 43. Later on, he played a cannon on the last few reds and very nearly got on something. If he had, he'd probably be back in the players' room now as a 3-1 winner. Instead of which, we're about to play a deciding frame finish.
Deciding frame. Mark Davis to break.
And this is the last frame Davis will play today, so this will decide whether he goes into tomorrow with 2 wins from 3 or just the 1. Maguire will be in one of those positions after this frame as well. And of course, he's still got 1 more match tonight to improve on that. Well, he was certainly entitled to go for that red after some of the ones he's potted in the last couple of frames. But it was always risky. And sure enough, Davis is in here with a good chance early on in this final frame.
One. Eight.
Just news from the other table, Nopon Sangkam has completed a 3-0 win over Ding Junhui. So what a day Sangkam is having. It's his first ever day of playing in the Championship League.
Nine.
He's now won his first 3 matches and he's only lost 1 frame. He's straight back on that table in a few minutes' time now to play Tom Ford from Leicester. Remember, Sangkam wasn't even supposed to be in the tournament. It was a bit of a reshuffle after a couple of late withdrawals, and he got the call for Group 7. Looks to be well on his way to the semi-finals of it.
17.
Sangkam and John Higgins, who's also won all 3 of his matches for the loss of just 1 frame. Very much the form players so far in this group.
$24. $25. 32. $33. $38.
Really is one of the great survivors of the pro game. 46 years of age now. He's played some of his best snooker, really, in the last 6 or 7 years. Was in a string of semi-finals, lost them all. Finally got to a ranking final at the English Open earlier this season. It was quite unfortunate to lose it in the end.
39.
Going down 9-7 to Stuart Bingham. He'd knocked out John Higgins and Ronnie O'Sullivan on the way there. And every chance now he's going to beat Stephen Maguire here, because that split has turned out very nicely. And Mark Davis must now see the winning line coming into view. And isn't it funny how it all turns around? He was on the brink of going 2-0 up. In no time at all he went from there to being 2-1 down. And only about 10 minutes or so after he was very much on the brink of losing the match 3-1, suddenly now he's got a great chance to win it.
$54.
Well, that shot wasn't guaranteed. Showed a very steady nerve to play it well. And really now, he'll be very disappointed if he doesn't get this one
55.
at this visit. Maguire has potted some great reds in this match. The one he took on at the start of this frame looks to have proved a bridge too far. And it now seems certain to have been his last shot.
$63.
So Davis 70 in front, not quite there yet. Still 75 left.
70. 71.
But that takes care of it now. And what a fine finish this has been for Davis. And he'll end the day with 2 wins out of 3. What a difference that makes. Getting that second win on the board just sends you into the
78.
second and final day of the group in much better shape.
79.
That's for Stephen Maguire, just 1 win from his 3 matches. He does have a chance to improve on that, as I was saying. Be back on in a few minutes to play Michael White, who's really struggled today. He's lost all 3 of his matches.
86. $92.
And what a feeling it always is to finish out the match with the highest break of the match.
93.
And if he can pot this red, he'll turn it into a century. Breaks down on 99, but a fine performance from Mark Davis. He was 2-1 down, but he battled away to level it, and he's taken his first chance in the decider. Very well indeed. Mark Davis then, the winner against Stephen Maguire by 3 frames to 2.